Hello everybody, welcome back. I'm Inside Legends. Today is Monday, January 26th, 2026, and today we're going to be talking about this poll coming out of the state of, well, every single state, coming out of every single state about the approval rating of every single senator in the United States Senate. And what we're going to do in this video is kind of label the Senate map and show you just how these, I guarantee you, these numbers are going to surprise you. These numbers could determine the Senate majority in 2026, and Democrats, based on these numbers, have a better shot than you would think. So let's just get straight into this video. So, like I said, we're going to determine the Senate map, not based on these approval ratings, but with these approval ratings in mind. So I have the 10 most competitive Senate seats in 2026. Some are more competitive than others, and we're going to start out with the ones that are less competitive, like the one in Florida. Florida is going to go to the Republican Party. The approval rating of the senator right now, Ashley Moody. Now, yes, she's never been elected because she was the replacement for Marco Rubio when he left to be Secretary of State. But she has a plus 17 approval rating. The polls show her leading by about 10 points. I don't even know if she's going to be the Republican nominee for the Senate seat in 2026, but I think she will. Yeah, she will. Disregard that. But she's leading by about 10 points. She has a very positive approval rating, 17 points in a state that's not R plus 17. Is going to go to the Republican Party. But that's the least interesting of these states. Next, what we're going to talk about is the next least interesting, which is Iowa. Now, unfortunately, we have literally no polls out of the state of Iowa, but the senator Joni Ernst has a -5 approval rating in a state that Donald Trump won in 2024 by 13 points. Now, yes, this doesn't really mean anything because she's not running for re-election. She's retiring because she is so unpopular, but so that means that this seat's probably going to stay for the Republican Party. Yes, the senator has a negative approval rating, but she is not running for re-election. So Republicans are going to get the seat. Why is it purple? Republicans are going to get the seat pretty solidly. Democrats have a shot at winning it. It's a closer state, but they don't have any stellar Democratic candidates. There's no unbelievably terrible Republican candidate. They're going to win it. And now let's move on to the state of Michigan. Michigan, I'm going to label. Actually, I'll do that in a second. The current senator in Michigan, Gary Peters, is retiring, but he has a plus 17 approval rating. Yes, the polls show this race close, but the Democrats is most likely going to win this race. It's not for sure, but based on the approval rating of the senator, which we're kind of trying to keep in mind to base this map off of, with polls in mind and the approval rating of the senator, of the retiring senator, Democrats are probably going to win the state of Michigan in 2026. And now let's talk about the state of Ohio. Ohio is a state that's close in theory for the Democratic Party. Two polls actually have Sharon Brown ahead in this state for the Senate race, but let's look at the approval rating of the senator. Where is he? John Husted. Josh Husted. 90% sure that's his name, Josh Husted. But he has a plus 15 approval rating in the state of Ohio. He's running for re-election in 2026. Like I said, Sharon Brown is going against him, but with keeping approval rating in mind, Ohio's a red state. The senator is popular. It's probably going to go to the Republican Party once again. And now let's talk about this. Actually, talk about just one kind of less interesting state. That's the state of Texas. Yes, the senator who is running for re-election, John Cornyn, he has a positive approval rating, but it's only positive by 6 points in the state of Texas, which is not great. But we don't even know if he's going to be the Republican nominee. It's a very tightly contested Republican primary. And yes, Ken Paxton has a more negative approval rating than John Cornyn. I don't have approval rating for him, unfortunately, but they're both relatively unpopular. But at the end of the day, I'm going to label this, for the sake of the video, for the Republican Party. And so we can talk about these last Senate races, the most interesting Senate races, based on this new poll with approval rating. And wait for the last three. The last three are the absolute most important, the most interesting that could decide the Senate majority in 2026. Next, let's talk about Georgia. Jon Ossoff is running for re-election in the state of Georgia. And what makes this so interesting is look at this. He has a plus 18 approval rating in the state of Georgia. This is a state that just voted for Donald Trump by 2 points. However, on the Senate level, they elected Raphael Warnock in a red wave year by about 3 points. And 2020, when Jon Ossoff was expected to lose, he was seen as a sacrificial lamb. He was expected to lose this race. He won, and he won by over a point. He's popular, and based on this approval rating, he's going to absolutely cruise to victory in 2026 in the state of Georgia, which is a state that Republicans should be looking at to flip to the Republican Party. But instead, they have to focus on states like Alaska and Nebraska and even Texas and Ohio and Iowa. This should be a state the Republicans are looking at to flip, and Democrats are locking it in based on Jon Ossoff's approval rating and polls in the state. He's not losing in a singular poll. And now, even in Signal, a Republican pollster, he's leading by 7 points. He's going to do very well in the Senate race in 2026. And now we get into North Carolina. What's interesting about North Carolina is Thom Tillis is not running for re-election. Where is Thom Tillis? I'm pretty sure he has a pretty low approval rating. Yeah, he has only a +4 approval rating, which, I mean, in North Carolina, that's actually a decent approval rating because the states roughly are +2 on average. Donald Trump won it by 3. 2020 won it by 1. Senate races, let's see, R+3. This is roughly R+3 state. R+2. Thom Tillis. It's a Republican state, and he only has a +4 approval rating. Pretty average, but he's not running for re-election. He's been ousted pretty much from Congress after the 2026 midterms. But what's interesting about this is the polls. Michael Whatley is no more popular than Thom Tillis. Where are the polls? Yeah, Roy Cooper, the former Democratic governor, he's winning by a huge margin in nearly every single poll. This latest poll has him up by 24 points. Yes, that's because of the huge undecided, but other polls, I mean, he's up by 5, he's up by 8, he's up by 4, he's up by 7, he's up by 8. He's very popular, and he's going to cruise to victory in North Carolina. And now, the 3 races that are the most important, the 3 races that I haven't showed you yet, but these polls make extremely interesting. Let's start with the state of Maine. Maine is one of the core 4 battleground states in 2026. Michigan, Georgia, North Carolina, and Maine. In Maine, it's a very tight race. Susan Collins, Janet Mills tied. Susan Collins, Janet Mills. Susan Collins is leading. Janet Mills leading. Susan Collins against Karen Plattner. Karen Plattner slightly leads in all the polls. It's a very close race, though. She's been in office for 3 decades, I believe. She is a Republican senator in the state of Maine. However, let's look at her approval rating. She's the second most unpopular senator in the country. She has a -13 approval rating in a blue state. She needs to be winning. For her to win Maine in 2026, a state that went to Kamala Harris by 7 points, she needs to have a positive approval rating like +10. She has to have a very good approval rating if she wants to win this Senate race. But if she has a -13 approval rating in a state, in a blue state, she's not going to win re-election in 2026. Democrats are going to cruise to victory in the state of Maine if this poll is accurate. Because if you're the literal last Republican senator in a blue state, which she is, she's not going to stay in that office with a -13 approval rating. She is not, simply put. And that brings Democrats up to 49 seats. And Republicans at 49 as well. Let's talk about Alaska next. What's another very interesting is, you might have noticed, Dan Sullivan has a -8 approval rating. You might say, okay, who's Dan Sullivan? He is the incumbent senator in the state of Alaska. He's the 4th most unpopular senator in the United States Senate. On top of that, Maripotola leads in all of the recent polls. by roughly 2 points each. She's looking very good in this race, and Dan Sullivan is supposed to be a relatively strong Republican challenger, but if he's the fourth most unpopular senator in the country, running against a extremely, very, very popular Maria Peltola, Republicans can kiss this race goodbye. It can be a flip for the Democratic Party, and that brings Democrats to 50 seats in the United States Senate. That would be now. Normally, this would mean a Republican majority because JD Vance would be the tiebreaker, but Nebraska is the very last state that I want to talk about here. And what's interesting about this poll is that Pete Ricketts only has a positive 1 approval rating. Pete Ricketts is the incumbent United States Senator in the state of Nebraska. He won re-election in 2024 by 25 points, but now he only has a +1 approval rating, and he's going against an extremely popular, very popular Dan Osborne, an independent. Now, Dan Osborne ran in this other Nebraska Senate race, and he lost by less than 7 points in 2024, a red environment. And now you might say, okay, Deb Fischer is a very weak candidate. Pete Ricketts is a strong candidate. Based on this, not really. If he only has a +1 approval rating, when he just won re-election by 25 in the last election cycle, in a state that voted for Donald Trump by 21 points, he can kiss this Senate race goodbye. He can kiss the seat goodbye. And now Democrats cannot win this seat. They're not even fielding a candidate. The independent Dan Osborne can win this seat. Based on this approval rating and based on the polls, we don't have many polls. We have 3 polls, but Pete Ricketts is only up by 1 point in 2 polls, and Dan Osborne is up by 1 point in another poll. This race is so overlooked. Not Democrats, but Republicans can and will lose this Senate race. If the 3 Senate races that are going to determine if the Senate races that are going to determine the Senate majority, states like Nebraska, Alaska, Maine, and say Georgia, any of these other states that will decide Senate majority, these Republicans have extremely low approval ratings. They're negative, like Susan Collins, second most unpopular senator in the country. Dan Sullivan, 4th most unpopular senator in the country. Pete Ricketts, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Pete Ricketts, the 8th most unpopular senator in the country. These are races that they need to be locking in. Republicans need to be locking in because they want to expand on their Senate majority, not lose their Senate majority in 2026 after winning it by 6 seats just 2 years prior. Okay, that's enough about this video. That's enough of my yapping. What are your thoughts on this poll? Do you think this spells honestly disaster for the Republican Party? I mean, Susan Collins should be winning easily in Maine. Dan Sullivan should be winning easily in Alaska, but their approval ratings are suggesting otherwise, and so are polls, which is how Democrats could retain the Senate majority in 2026. Okay, I already said thanks for watching. No, I didn't. Thanks for watching this video. And if you like this video, I encourage you to, like the video and subscribe to my channel. I upload election news every single day. I encourage you to turn on notifications so you can see when I upload this election news. And yeah, I hope you have a great day.